You were never meant to chase. You were never meant to beg, to explain yourself, or to wait for someone who turned their back on you. Yet that's what so many men do after they've been left betrayed or forgotten. They fall into silence, not the kind that empowers, but the kind that consumes. They mistake waiting in the dark for strength, when really, it's just fear wrapped in false hope. Right now, you're standing at a crossroads. Either you stay stuck in the past, waiting to be remembered by someone who chose to forget you, or you become the man she'll regret ever letting go. This video is your blueprint for transformation. You'll learn how to turn silence into power, how to master your emotions, how to become the man who no longer needs closure, because he is the closure. And by the end, you won't just feel stronger, you'll be stronger. Hit the subscribe button to support this channel and help every man out there who needs to hear what you're hearing right now. For every man who's been betrayed, who's lost, who's searching for clarity and strength and doesn't know where to start. By liking, commenting, and sharing this video, you help us reach them. You help change lives. The pain she never expected, she walked away believing she had the upper hand. Whether it happened in a heated moment or in quiet, calculated silence, she thought she knew exactly how you'd respond. She expected messages, calls, emotional outbursts. She imagined you begging her to come back, promising to change, trying to make sense of what went wrong. In her mind, you were supposed to fall apart, because that's what most men do. They break down, they unravel, they become a shadow of themselves, consumed by regret, confused, spiraling, and self-doubt. And that reaction, that collapse, that's where she draws her power. That's what confirms her worth. That's what tells her she still matters. But when you didn't give her that, when all she got was your silence, that's when everything began to change. Your silence wasn't weakness. It wasn't avoidance. It was power. Pure, silent, disciplined power. Because silence is never truly empty. It's not the absence of sound. It's the presence of strength. It's full of meaning. It's full of self-respect. It's the decision to refuse drama, to withhold attention, and to stand in complete control of your emotional energy. And here's the truth most men never realize. The most painful thing you can ever give someone who expected to be chased is nothing. No reaction, no validation, no emotional display that confirms their impact. Nothing but your stillness. And that stillness, that's what begins to haunt her. Not because it's cruel, but because it forces her to sit with herself. It turns the mirror around. It shines a light on her own decisions, without interference, without distraction. She begins to wonder, not because you said something clever, not because you posted something aimed at her, but because you vanished without a trace. The man who once gave her everything now offers her nothing, and that contrast becomes unbearable. Silence creates space, and in that space, her own doubts start to grow. Was she ever truly important to you? Were you just pretending all along? Did she completely misjudge your emotional investment? Suddenly, the roles are reversed. You're no longer seeking her attention. She's seeking closure. She's seeking a response, anything to confirm that she still has a place in your world. But there's nothing. Not because you're playing games, but because you've stepped into something greater. A life that no longer revolves around her. And this is the shift. The exact moment where the pain she expected you to feel becomes the pain she begins to experience. Not through anger, not through arguments, but through the sheer cold realization that she no longer holds any power over you. That silence you gave her, it was louder than any words you could have spoken. It spoke of boundaries, of growth, of your refusal to be emotionally manipulated. She left expecting a storm, instead she found calm. She expected a broken man, instead she discovered a grounded one. That unexpected outcome shakes her deeper than any conflict ever could. Because now she's not just dealing with loss. She's dealing with the terrifying truth that the version of you she once controlled no longer exists. The art of emotional control. Emotional control is not about becoming numb. It's not about turning into a robot, suppressing everything you feel or pretending that nothing touches you. Emotional control is the highest form of strength a man can possess. Not because he doesn't feel, but because he doesn't react on command. Most men are emotional slaves. They don't even realize how easy they are to manipulate. One word, one text, one photo on social media, and suddenly they're spiraling. Angry, hurt, desperate. This is the trap. Is the moment she can predict your reaction, she controls your state of mind. And when she controls your emotions, she owns your energy. A man who is easily provoked is a man who is easily broken. Think about that. If your emotions rise and fall based on what someone else says or does, you are not in charge of your life. You are a puppet, and your strings are exposed. She pushes, you explode. She disappears. You chase. She posts something flirty, and suddenly you're spiraling into jealousy. And she knows it. She sees it. She counts on it. That's why most men stay stuck. They become addicted to reacting. They believe their emotions are truth, when in reality, their reactions are just emotional obedience. But the man who doesn't react, the man who stays grounded while everything around him is shaking, that man is different. He is dangerous, not because he threatens, but because he doesn't need to. He doesn't flinch. He doesn't argue. He doesn't chase. His calm is not passivity, it's calculated. It's a choice, a weapon, and it's one that leaves the other person completely disarmed. Because when you respond with silence instead of drama, with presence instead of panic, with logic instead of emotion, you do something few men ever do. You rise above the noise. She expected a fight. She expected chaos. She expected tears, rage, or desperation. But instead, you gave her stillness. You didn't block her. You didn't stalk her online. You didn't try to win her back with long messages or performative posts. You simply moved your energy elsewhere, and in doing so, you took back something she thought she owned. Your power. And that silence, that unexpected calm, it forces her into unfamiliar territory. She's no longer sure of her influence. She starts questioning everything. Was she ever truly loved? Was your connection real? Or were you just stronger than she thought? These questions don't come from your words. They come from your lack of them. Because silence, when rooted in self-respect, speaks louder than anything you could say. The truth is, people fear what they cannot read. When you react, you give her the script. She knows exactly what to expect and how to control the scene. But when you refuse to play the game, when you remain unshaken, she loses her role as the director of your emotional reality. And that loss, that unpredictability, is what begins to unravel her. The longer your silence stretches, the more powerful you become. Not because you're trying to prove something, but because you've chosen you. Emotional control is not about revenge. It's about restoration. It's about reminding yourself that you don't owe anyone a reaction, a breakdown, or a performance. You owe yourself peace. So remember this: the man who cannot be provoked cannot be defeated. Because while others waste energy on drama, the emotionally disciplined man invested in his mission, and in doing so, he becomes untouchable. The law of reverse psychology. People don't value what's easily available. It's not just a theory, it's human instinct. The more someone gives without pause, without question, the more they are taken for granted. And this is why so many men fail. After a breakup, they become desperate, they chase, they text, they apologize, explain, beg for another chance. They throw away their pride in the hope of restoring something that's already broken. But the moment you do that, you confirm exactly what she believes: that she has the power, and that you are nothing without her. But when you stop, when you go silent, when you offer her nothing but space, the dynamic flips completely. Suddenly, you're no longer predictable. You're not the man sitting by the phone, watching her stories, waiting for a sign. You become a mystery. And mystery is powerful. When she can no longer predict what you'll do, when she doesn't hear from you, doesn't see you watching, doesn't feel your energy anymore, her mind has no choice but to start asking questions. Why hasn't he called? Did he ever really care? Has he moved on already? And this is where reverse psychology begins its silent work. Because you're not manipulating her with words. You're not trying to plant seeds of jealousy. You're not even trying to get her attention. You're simply gone, unavailable, detached. And that absence becomes louder than any presence ever could. The mind hates uncertainty. It hates gaps in the story. And when you create silence, she starts filling in the blanks. But here's the cruel twist. She fills them with fear. Fear that you're doing better. Fear that you've leveled up. Fear that she was just a chapter in your book, and the story is already moving on without her. She starts to imagine you thriving, being stronger, healthier, more focused. Maybe she thinks you've met someone new. Maybe she believes you finally stepped into the next chapter of your life without her. Power she never thought you had. And none of this needs to be confirmed. You don't need to post pictures. You don't need to hint. Your silence says it all. Because in her world, attention equals importance. So when your attention vanishes, her certainty does too. Indifference is not just emotional control. It's psychological warfare. When you act like she doesn't matter, she starts to wonder if she ever did. When you stop engaging, she starts doubting her own value. That doubt grows, quietly and then aggressively, until it turns into full-blown regret. But by then, it's too late. Because regret doesn't come from rejection. It comes from watching someone you once controlled become someone you can no longer reach. And the irony, this all happens not because you tried harder, but because you stopped trying completely. You did the one thing she didn't expect. You walked away. Not with drama, with anger, but with indifference. No announcement, no closure, no final message. Just distance, just growth, just silence. And now she's the one replaying old memories, rereading old messages, wondering where she lost you. Not because of anything you said, but because you mastered the one strategy most men never understand. Reverse psychology through complete withdrawal. The rise through pain. Pain changes you. It either destroys you or rebuilds you. There is no middle ground. The man who grows through heartbreak doesn't simply get over it. He doesn't distract himself with temporary pleasures or pretend it didn't hurt. No, he feels it fully. But he doesn't let it define him. He lets it refine him. Pain, when embraced, is the sharpest blade a man can forge himself with. It cuts through weakness. It exposes every insecurity, every dependency, every illusion. And that exposure is a gift because it gives you clarity. Most men run from pain. They numb it with distractions, nights out, shallow attention, less scrolling, meaningless hookups. They scroll through old messages, hoping for closure, stare at the ceiling late at night, replaying the breakup in their mind, drowning in what ifs and if onlys. But all that time spent wishing, it's time stolen from the man they could be. Because pain left unmanaged becomes stagnation. The pain transformed becomes power. The man who rises doesn't avoid the pain. He confronts it. And then he goes to work quietly, without announcement. He doesn't seek revenge. He seeks resurrection. Every early morning when his alarm rings and he doesn't snooze. It's pain-fueling discipline. Every rep in the gym when his muscles scream and he doesn't quit. It's heartbreak-fueling strength. Every book he reads, every dollar he earns, every skill he masters. It's all built on the foundation of pain. He doesn't build out of spite. He builds because now he understands that the only way out is through. And this kind of transformation isn't loud. You won't post about it, you won't tell anyone about it, but they will feel it. She will feel it when she eventually looks back. Whether it's weeks, months, or even years later, she won't recognize you. She left behind one version of you. But the man standing in front of her now is someone entirely different, sharper, quiet, more focused, unbothered, unreachable. Not because you were trying to make her regret, but because you stopped trying at all. That's the difference. Most men seek growth, to prove something to her. They want her to see what she lost. They want to be noticed. But true evolution doesn't happen to get her back. It happens because you finally realized you were never meant to stay broken. The pain wasn't there to punish you. It was there to introduce you to your own strength. to force you to finally build yourself. Not for her, not for validation, but for the man in the mirror, for the warrior you were meant to become. And now she becomes irrelevant. Not hated, not pitied, just irrelevant, because the version of you that needed her no longer exists. He died in the fire, and what came out of that fire isn't a man hoping for closure, but a man who closed the chapter himself. The power of detachment. Detachment is not about becoming cold. It's not about shutting off your emotions or pretending you were never hurt. It's about something much deeper and infinitely more powerful. Choosing peace over chaos. It's about reclaiming your energy and no longer allowing someone else to dictate your mental and emotional state. You don't detach to punish her. You detach to protect yourself, to rebuild, to rise. Because the truth is, as long as she still has a piece of your attention, she still has a piece of your power. Divided between the past and his purpose, is a man who never reaches his full potential. Real detachment doesn't mean acting like you don't care. It means actually not caring. You no longer check her social media, not because you're forcing yourself not to, but because you genuinely don't think about it anymore. You're not curious about who she's with. You're not hoping she sees your progress. You're not calculating how to make her regret because your focus has shifted inward. Your validation is no longer external. It's found in the way you carry yourself, the way you keep your word to yourself, the way you've turned silence into strength. And here's what makes detachment magnetic. When you don't chase, the world starts chasing you. When you no longer need attention, you become captivating. Your energy changes. You walk differently. You speak less, but say more. You're not trying to prove anything to anyone. Not to her. Not to the world, not even to yourself. You're simply becoming, and people feel that. She feels that. She notices that the man who used to orbit around her is now in his own gravity, that the man who once made her the center of his world has become the center of his own. She starts wondering, because you said anything, but because you said nothing. She can feel the emotional cord is cut, and the silence is no longer a waiting game. It's a wall, a boundary, not built out of bitterness, but out of evolution. And now, she's the one uncertain. She's the one scrolling. She's the one searching. That's the paradox of detachment. When you no longer care if she regrets losing you, that's when she does. Because you've stepped into your own power. Not temporarily, not for revenge, but permanently for peace. True detachment isn't dramatic. It's quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It simply exists. It lives in your routines, in your discipline, in your refusal to be emotionally available to what no longer serves you. The man who embodies this energy doesn't need to be flashy. He doesn't need to post. He doesn't need to talk about how much he's grown. He simply lives it day by day, step by step. And with each step, he walks further from the boy who needed her, and closer to the man who doesn't need anyone. Because the moment you no longer care about what she thinks, what she does, or whether she regrets walking away, is the moment you realize she was never your destination. She was the detour that taught you how to reroute your life back to yourself. The cold shoulder effect. There's a kind of silence that can be heard louder than any scream. And then there's something even more powerful than silence, presence without reaction. This is the cold shoulder effect. It's not about pretending not to care. It's about becoming so emotionally composed, so unaffected, that even in the moment when she finally reaches out, or when you unexpectedly cross paths, you give her nothing but calm, no spark, no heat, no emotion. She can cling to just a neutral presence that says everything without saying a word. Imagine the moment you run into her, maybe by chance, maybe because she reached out just to check in. This is the moment she has secretly been waiting for, not to see you, but to see if she still has control. She's testing the water, looking for a flicker of emotion. She wants confirmation that she still matters, that you still care, that somewhere behind your silence, she still has a place in your heart. She's hoping your eyes will light up, that you'll say too much, that you'll act uncomfortable, or worse, overconfident, loud, desperate to prove something. But the man who is truly moved on doesn't react. He doesn't stumble over his words or go out of his way to seem cool. He doesn't ignore her like a child playing power games. No, he does something far more powerful. He stays composed. He replies, when spoken to, but with measured detachment. His tone is calm, his expression unreadable. He doesn't lean forward, he doesn't reach for the past. He stands grounded in the present, unaffected by the ghost in front of him. Not because he's cold, but because he's free. And that's what breaks her. Because she expected anything but that. Anger would have meant you still cared. Jealousy would have meant she still mattered. Even rudeness would have been a sign of emotional residue. But neutrality that tells her the emotional storm is over, that her grip has fully loosened, that she no longer has access, not just to your time or your attention, but to your energy. And that, more than anything else, is terrifying. She sees a man who isn't proving anything because he has nothing left to prove. She sees a man who once gave her his heart, now giving her a polite, empty smile, and moving forward as if she's just another face in the crowd. That shift is devastating, because now she understands that whatever power she once had over you is gone. And it didn't vanish in some dramatic goodbye or explosive argument. It slipped away quietly, while she wasn't paying attention. And now, she's the one left standing in the silence. The cold shoulder effect is not about rejection. It's about closure without conversation. It's about showing her, without ever having to say it, that the man she once knew no longer lives here, that the door has closed. Not out of spite, but out of growth. And when she looks at you now, all she sees is a stranger who isn't trying to hurt her, impress her, or even get even. A stranger who simply doesn't care anymore. That's not cruelty, that's freedom. The final level, indifference. There is a point you reach in your healing when anger fades, when sadness no longer tightens your chest, when you stop checking your phone for messages that will never come, when you stop rehearsing what you would say if you saw her again. That point is called indifference. And it's not something you fake. It's something you become. True indifference is not coldness. It's not pretending you don't care while secretly hoping she notices. It's not ghosting her out of spite. Real indifference is the moment you wake up, and for the first time, she's simply not on your mind. Indifference is the highest level of freedom. It's when you reclaimed your time, your thoughts, your emotional bandwidth. She no longer exists in your mental space. Not because you've erased her, but because you've outgrown her. She doesn't sit in your future plans. She doesn't occupy your decisions. She isn't part of your self-talk anymore. She's just gone, quietly, naturally, without force. And that's the beauty of it. It isn't forced. You didn't push her out. You just evolved so far past where she left you that she no longer fits into the man you've become at this level. You're no longer triggered by the mention of her name. You're not curious about who she's with or what she's doing. You don't wonder if she regrets losing you. You don't care if she ever realizes her mistake because your focus has shifted so completely toward your growth, your mission, your peace, that her existence is no longer relevant. And when that shift happens, something inside you clicks. You no longer need closure. You no longer need to be understood. You no longer need to be remembered. The only thing that matters is your direction forward. She may come back. She may reach out. She may test the waters, but none of it affects you now. Because indifference has stripped her of her power. And not because you made a big announcement. Not because you told the world you're done. But because quietly, silently, you detached. You healed. And in doing so, you built a life that's no longer about proving anything to anyone, especially not to someone who once walked away from you. You are no longer living in reaction. You are living in intention. And when you meet the world from that place of inner peace, it bends in your favor. You move differently. You command respect without demanding it. People feel your presence, not because you try to be seen, but because you no longer chase being seen. That's the strength of true detachment. That's the calm of a man who has mastered himself. She was never your endgame. She was a chapter, a teacher, a mirror that reflected your weaknesses, your emotional dependence, and your need for external validation. But now, that chapter is closed. And you didn't close it out of rage. You closed it out of realization. She was not your future. She was your awakening. And now, you write your own story not from pain, but from power. By the time she realizes what she lost, you'll be so far into your purpose, your peace, and your progress, that even if she called your name, you wouldn't hear it. Not because your ears are closed, but because your life is too full of what matters now. And that right there is the final level. Not revenge, not regret, but indifference. Quiet, whole, unshakable. This is your moment. You're not just healing, you're right.